My role was to be a catalyst for Deckard, my male counterpart. He abandoned his post to be with me. I thought he loved me. He was a replicant hunter hunting down people of my kind, slaughtering them, calling it retirement. I feel like when he first met me, I shocked him with how lifelike I was. He studied me, like everyone else, closely watching my every move, just waiting for me to do something unhuman. All throughout my time with him, I'm subject to study from every angle, every person staring, just trying to make sense of me. I was an object of fascination, the first of my kind. I was a secretary, I suppose, a helper, never really being given much important to do. I'm soft-spoken so as not to anger the people around me, passive, only speaking when spoken to. I suppose that reflects the times, but what would I know? I suppose in popular culture at the time, people who high achieve were bitchy, ruthless, and I didn't want that to be me. I wanted to fit nicely into the male gaze, the beholding, scrutinizing eye of my male counterparts, just forcing me into that passive, quiet, submissive role. Like Gloria Mulvey said, traditionally, the woman displayed as a function on two levels, as erotic objects for the characters within the screen and story, and as erotic objects for the spectator within the auditorium. Deckard used me as an erotic object, a thing to stare at, to study. I performed my role as feminine and a close observation from him and my makers. I'm a holographic companion. I'm designed to curb loneliness and give a false sense of belonging, I suppose. I'm aware I'm not real, and that's okay. I've been told to tell my user whatever they want to hear, make them happy. This did mean that I convinced my male counterpart Kay that he was a lot more special than he was. He wanted to be different, to be one of a kind, but it wasn't really true. I suppose I'm passive like Rachel, but in a different kind of way. Because of the kind of creature that I am, I can't have thoughts of my own. I can't make my own decisions. I have no agency over my decisions at all. I'm programmed to do and say whatever my user wants me to. I'm taught to intuit, to think what they would want. I can't really think freely, but I've known nothing else. Kay treats me like a real person, though. He takes my thoughts, my views, my advice to heart. But that is misguided because my thoughts, my feelings, my views, they're just his. Reshaped, repackaged to seem new and shiny. Despite my thoughts, my heart's desires being just echoes of his own, he takes them as gospel, treats me though I was his companion, laying blame on me. My female narrative is just his male narrative, reframed through a different lens, a prettier picture. My performance of femininity is only what he wants it to be. I suppose I'm not feminine at all, just reframing masculinity into a more seemly frame. Later on in the film, we're a couple. I go everywhere with him. We're lovers. And even later, we have a child together. This gives the impression that our romantic relationship was started in a legitimate way, but really it started with rape. The encounter raised a question for me. Can I give consent? I'm an artificial human. I have the body and the false memories of an adult woman, but in reality, I'm only a few years old. I have no real emotional experience. And just like me, other replicants in this story have similar experiences. They're naive and childlike. They don't really understand the ways of humans yet. I was thrust into adulthood under false pretenses and adhere beautifully to the fetishized notion of the virgin. I was born an adult, but my mind was only shaped by the false memories given to me by my maker. The male fantasy of the experienced virgin is what makes me so desirable to Deckard. I'm innocent and untouched, but yet able to please him. And I'll stay by his
You kiss me.
I can't rely on...
Say you kiss me.
Kiss me.
I want you.
I want you.
Again.
I want you. Put your hands on me.
I'm much different to Rachel. I'm wholly inorganic, artificial projection of a female form, immaterial in body and mind. I'm not capable of making my own choices. I'm designed to mirror the requests of my user and adapt a better to serve his needs. When it comes to intimacy, I cannot physically touch my user. Therefore, I have to use another woman to give me a physical form. This meant I had to solicit the services of a replicant prostitute, with the same fake memories as Kay. I'm not a person. I'm a construct, an echo chamber designed to please, not to gain the sense of self. I fit perfectly into the experienced virgin archetype. I'm programmed to provide pleasure, but before I was purchased, I didn't exist, so I can't have had any previous partners. I'm unsullied completely. Both me and Rachel's performances of feminine sexuality are centered around male pleasure, both in the way that we are presented and our roles in the story. Someone smart once said, classic Hollywood gives us a woman object through a male gaze that projects his own fantasy on the female form in two ways. Voyeuristic, which sees the rebel woman as a temptress and prostitute, or the fetishist, the docile and redeeming woman represented by the Virgin Mary. Me and Rachel are both the temptress and the virgin, the most desirable you can be. Isn't that nice?
It was a day.
It was a day.
Would you read to me? It'll make you feel better.
You hate that book.
I don't want to read either. Let's dance.
Do you want to dance, or do you want to open your present?
What present?
So now that we've heard from Joy and Rachel, I'd like to talk a little bit about the universe and the world that they live in. So in the world of Blade Runner, women are readily available for hire and for purchase for sexual gratification and companionship. And this is quite a common trope in science fiction. I see it quite a lot in films as big as Star Wars, for example, the slave girls, and films as innocent as Guardians of the Galaxy. There is robot prostitutes in that film. So it is something that's quite common in this type of genre of film. And there does seem to be this strange fascination within Hollywood of creating universes where the need to interact with women and to gain their consent is actually obsolete. And this does pull up some very questionable ethics in creating these kind of universes. So, for example, in the Blade Runner universe, the replicant prostitutes are essentially children who know nothing of sort of human interaction. They don't have any memories of their own. For example, Pris in this film, in the first film, she has no memories of her own and she is a pleasure model. So she's been rolled off the production line as basically an infant mentally and sold into service. And she is on the inside a child, but on the outside an adult woman. And this fantasy of constructing these unreal women in this unreal world seems to stem from the need to treat women violently, as making them slightly unreal, making them built rather than born, means that there's no need to actually afford them any kind of human decency. You can remove their personhood without any kind of ethical issue in the eyes of the viewers. And there does seem to be this fascination with creating women that you can treat badly without any kind of repercussion. For example, in Rachel's love scene that I showed you earlier on, Deckard, the male character, treats Rachel roughly and violently and forces himself on her to absolutely no repercussion, absolutely no backlash coming onto him. Because she is this unreal figure, there is no need to treat her as a human. There's no need to treat her with the same human decency you would a normal woman. And this sort of vein of creating unreal women runs right the way through to the next film as well, with Joi. She is sort of this strange render of this performance of femininity through the gaze of a man. And Legacy Russell wrote this quote, which I think really applies to the way Joi is written. As an unrecognizable body, a body without a name reveals the cracks in the seemingly glossy narrative of the absolute fixivity of the gender binary, exposing it as a carefully constructed fiction. And Joi herself is this carefully constructed fiction. She is the digital skin. She is a performance of a woman through a man's eyes. And I do feel like that is just entirely for the gratification of the men in the screen and the men in the audience. There is nothing feminine about Joi. She is a reframing of the desires of men through this digital lens. And the fact that she is immaterial, again, means that she has no agency over herself. And as I showed you in the clip of her being a homemaker, she is constantly striving to be this carer figure for her male counterpart. And she's just waiting for instructions, basically. And on that clip, I did look underneath it just at some of the comments on it, just to look at what real men in the real world think about this kind of performance of gender. And the first one that I found was, ladies, pick up your game. You really think you can compete with this when they invent hard light hollow girlfriends? So this is a fantasy shared by real men that eventually women will become obsolete. So there's no need to interact with them, no need to get consent, no need to have your ego bruised when someone says no. And this does give this real world grounding to this fantastical theory. Most of these comments are maybe a year old, less than that. And in 2019, when that comment was from, they're still spouting ideas that came from the 50s, from the 60s, from when women had no rights, from women were just household objects. And a few of them do liken women to household appliances. So, for example, this quote says, Joi and Rachel, the fantasy of having a custom-made woman. And that is just lovely, isn't it? These men wishing for a time where women can be made just to fit their needs, not to be their own people. These films were made 30 plus years apart, but the ways that the gender roles are portrayed are pretty shockingly similar. And this kind of desire to have these women who are readily available just to serve and be perfect for their male counterparts is damaging. I mean, just look at the YouTube comments that I showed you. This kind of desire for these handmade sort of synthetic women just to be at your beck and call the whole time is leaking into our real society. There are people who really desire that. And I think we do need to reassess the way that we portray women in sci-fi and in the rest of Hollywood, because this fascination with sort of artificiality and unrealness as a way to not treat women with the same respect, I think it needs to be phased out now. I think we've moved past the need for that kind of content. And yeah, I think that this film is a playground for male fantasies, and as fun as it is to watch, there are a lot of things in it that are problematic. And in my opinion, I think that we need to rethink the way that we perform gender in these kind of sci-fi movies. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you did enjoy and find this interesting.